Hey, what's up, guys? It's Jesse here from Matt Naps, and today we're going to be talking about Francis Ngannou, where he ranks all time in the heavyweights, and if he has a chance to be the GOAT. So first of all, uh, the big difference between, I guess you could say, UFC heavyweights and MMA in general, the two big ones being Fedor, Nogueira, Krokop. So I guess three big ones. Um, Nogueira and Krokop. Nogueira was actually able to win the belt in the UFC, but he was past his prime. So his UFC career, I wouldn't rate him as a top 10 all-time UFC fighter, but I would rate him as a top 10 all-time MMA heavyweight, just because of the stuff he did outside of the UFC. And again, same with Fedor and Krokop. I don't know if I put Krokop top 10 heavyweights, but he's definitely one of those guys that's close to that discussion outside of the UFC, but not inside of the UFC, just because he was already in his late 30s, I think, by the time he got to the UFC, so way past his prime. Most of his best fights were in Pride. But with those few exceptions, those three guys, pretty much all the best heavyweights have fought at least a good chunk of their career in the UFC. So, with those three exceptions, it's a pretty good proxy for his greatness as a heavyweight. So that being said, right now I don't think you can rate him as a top 10 all time. Just because there's been so many heavyweight champions. He is the 22nd champion, although some of those guys have regained the title, such as Cain Velasquez was champion 15 and 17. Stipe was champion 19 and 21. Randy Couture was champion 13, 6, and 3. There's a couple of other. Tim Sylvia was champion 9 and 12. So there's been a couple of guys, I think that's around 17 or 18 actual champions then. And a good chunk of those guys have been able to defend the belt, which gives them a little bit more credibility, but then some of them haven't. Obviously, the most impressive are both Stipe and Randy Couture. Both have 6 title wins. Different methods. Stipe won the belt, defended it 3 times, lost it to Cormier, gained it back, and then defended it again before losing it to Francis. So he has the most consecutive defenses with 3, and he's tied for overall title wins with 6. Randy Couture has the most title reigns. He has 3 reigns. He won it in 1997 off of Maurice Smith. He stripped when he left the UFC after a contract dispute, came back and beat Kevin Randleman for the title in 2000, defended it twice, which at the time was a record, and was the tied for the record until Stipe beat it. Lost it to Josh Barnett, who actually ended up getting stripped of the title because he tested positive for steroids. And then he came back 7 years later in 2007 and beat Tim Sylvia to win the title and actually defended it again against Gabriel Gonzalez, which was his 6th title win at heavyweight. So in my opinion, I would rank Stipe as the better heavyweight just because he's the bigger guy. He won in a more recent, newer division, more talented, stacked division than when Couture was fighting. Couture fought, I think, his 4th fight was a title fight. Stipe was like his 11th or 12th, I think, maybe a little bit sooner than that, but I think it was something like his 11th or 12th. His 16th. So, the division by the time Stipe was able to dominate it was much, much thicker. So even though Couture, and I would rank Couture better pound for pound just because he has the light heavyweight championship as well, and was able to defend it, was able to regain it. He won the interim title against Tito, beat Tito for the title, and then lost it to Vitor, regained it from Vitor before losing it to Chuck. So I would rank Randy Couture as a better pound-for-pound fighter than Stipe, but I think Stipe is the better heavyweight just because he's the bigger guy, bigger heavyweight, won in a thicker division. But that's because he did have a size advantage compared to Randy, at least, who was, I think, around 220 when he was fighting at heavyweight. He was a guy that probably could have made middleweight had he really, really tried, and had he been younger, again, I don't think Randy started fighting until he was in his mid-late 30s. Other guys that I would rate above Francis as of right now, although I think he could pass some of these guys in the future. Daniel Cormier won the belt, was able to defend it. Fabricio Verdum won the interim title and was able to take it from Cain. Cain himself won the title twice, defended it twice, which was tied for the record at one point. Junior Santos he was able to defend it. Lesnar at one point was tied for most title defenses. Tim Sylvia, another guy that was tied for most title defenses. I know a lot of people really don't like Tim Sylvia because he won at a time when the heavyweight division was probably at its weakest. A lot of the top guys were fighting in Pride. Nogueira, Couture, or not Couture, Nogueira, Fedor, Krokop. So a lot of people don't really like Sylvia, but he was, in terms of his UFC career, he did have that record for a while. Arlovsky, another one that had that tied. He originally won the title and then defended it, then was promoted to undisputed champion because Mir got in a bike accident, and then he defended his title again. Frank Mir, again, a guy that won the title and then came back and won the interim title. He ended up losing to Lesnar. Kevin Randleman, an original OG UFC heavyweight, he won the title and defended it. Arguably won against Boss Rutten too. It's pretty, actually, this is one of the most controversial fights of all time. It's kind of amazing that Boss won that fight, even though I'm a huge fan of Boss. Maurice Smith, another highly underrated heavyweight, a guy that, again, defended the title already once. Maurice Smith has probably one of the worst UFC records out of or MMA records out of a heavyweight champion because he lost a lot of his early fights. He got taken down and beat up a lot, but he was a high-level kickboxer, and once he learned how to defend himself from getting taken down and how to work on the ground, he got a lot better. And at the end of his career, he was able to become a world champion and was able to defend that belt. That being said, I think with Ngannou going against Derek Lewis, obviously Derek won the first fight, but there really wasn't much that happened in the fight. Derek won because he was he threw 6 punches and Ngannou threw 4. Really nothing happened in that fight. Ngannou was coming off his first loss to Stipe. It was very demoralized, and Derek Lewis had a back injury. This will be Derek's second title shot. He fought against Cormier and lost. And yeah, it'll be a banger, but I don't know. It'll be interesting because Ngannou isn't the most technical fighter, but he's huge and he's so powerful. But Derek Lewis is the one guy that's kind of built like him. Not quite as in shape, not quite as athletic, but he's the one guy that has that similar power. So Derek is a big challenge for him. And then again, he'll have to fight the Stipe rematch and then the John Jones fight that's coming up again too. So Ngannou is in a tough place where the next 3 fights are a guy that's just ridiculous power, just like him, then the greatest heavyweight of all time rematch most likely, and then the greatest fighter of all time, greatest light heavyweight of all time, John Jones, moving up. But if he's able to get through all those 3 guys, I think that would catapult him into at least that top 2, top 3, up there with Stipe and Randy Couture. But right now, as he's only won the 1 title, I don't think we can rank him as, I don't even think you can really argue he's top 10 all time yet. He is in one way and not in another. It really depends on what you mean by greatness, because some people, when they say greatness, they talk about like who is the best fighter at their peak, which is one argument, and then other people talk about like how much did they accomplish, right? Because you can only accomplish what you can accomplish relative to your competition. So it's not Randy's fault that the division wasn't thicker when he was the champion and able to get those 6 wins. And so that is another argument to be made. So, and the sport keeps evolving, right? So in some way, there is an argument to be made that whoever the current guy is, assuming that the title wasn't vacated and the current guy is actually the lineal champion, there's an argument to be made that the current guy is always the best ever. But more often than not, we tend to think of it as who accomplished the most, at least in individual sports. Who has the best accomplishments, who achieved the most, who's able to stay on top the longest. And right now, Francis isn't even in the top 10, but I think he definitely has the potential to. I think he's just so powerful. His wrestling's getting better. If you saw in the last Stipe fight, Stipe shot for a couple takedowns, I think 2, both failed, whereas in the first fight he was able to take him down pretty much no problem. He's getting better at boxing. His boxing is getting a lot crisper, whereas before, if you watch his early fights, he threw really wild looping punches, and now he's throwing a lot of stuff that's like straight down the middle. He still does get wild and loopy at some points, but he is getting crisper. The other thing you see a lot is if you watch his Instagram and you see his training videos, he's starting to throw a lot more kicks, starting to throw even wheel kicks and tornado kicks and like fancier stuff like that. So if we start seeing Ngannou incorporate a lot more kicking game, and his wrestling keeps getting better. Him being in France is really good, honestly. If I were him, I'd be going to Holland, training with like all those top Dutch kickboxers there, because those are some huge guys. Like I think there's only 3 heavyweight world kickboxing champions that are not Dutch in history. So all the top kickboxers in the world, at least when it comes to heavyweight guys, when he's trying to find big guys to train with, they're all in Holland. So if he's able to go over there and learn from those guys and get that high level kickboxing, and then maybe go over to Russia, really anywhere in the former Soviet bloc, all those Eastern European countries, they have really good wrestling programs. Britain has amazing boxing, but I don't know if he'll be able to go train there because he's already called out Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua. So even though there's 2 really good heavyweights for him to train with in Britain, he probably won't end up training with them. But yeah, he's in a really good place right now. But like geographically, being in training in France with his gym mainly in France, having the Netherlands be so close, having Eastern Europe not be too far away. If he's smart and he's going and training with those top Dutch kickboxers and he's going and training with those like Eastern European wrestlers, I think Francis has a really good chance of just being this unstoppable machine. I think that was the biggest mistake Brock Lesnar made, was when Brock Lesnar was fighting, he was basically just training with other wrestlers. He was just hanging out in Minnesota at his house, and it worked for a time because he was just such a big freak athlete. But eventually you got Cain Velasquez, who's a bit smaller but another absolute freak athlete, but he was actually training at 8K, and we saw the difference. He was training with world-class kickboxers here. He already had that wrestling. Ngannou's a little bit greener. He doesn't really have a martial arts background, but he's got just that amazing power. So if he's going out into Eastern Europe and training with those wrestlers, and another one is really good is Teddy Riner. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name. He's the current Olympic gold medalist in judo for the 100+ kilos weight class. He's French. I think he's actually of Cameroonian descent. Big black guy from France. So if Francis went and trained with him, got some high-level judo from that guy, training in Eastern Europe with those wrestlers, training in the Netherlands with those kickboxers, I just don't see anyone beating him. I think he'd go on an absolute tear where he gets a title reign where he's got like 6 or 7 defenses. Francis has the potential to go down as the greatest heavyweight of all time. Whether or not he will do it depends on a lot of different things. If he lets this get to his head, even if he doesn't let being the champion get to his head, if he gets too distracted by trying to help other people, because he seems to, want to help out in a lot in Africa, and that's great from a moral perspective, but realistically, the guys that are coming up in the gym, they're all training in the gym 24/7, and if you're off fucking around in Africa while they're getting better, that's going to bite you in the ass, especially when, from a skill perspective, you're already behind a lot of these guys, right? Like, you have the power, but a lot of these, you're not the most technical fighter. So that could be an issue. Both, the African stuff distracting him, and the possibility of getting arrogant, which we've seen with other heavyweights. Other fighters, not just heavyweights. And then there's always the fact that heavyweight is heavyweight, right? Like, there's a reason it's been so hard for guys to rack up title wins, especially consecutively. And that's because they all have the power to put each other away, right? Like, even the least powerful heavyweights have, like, half of their wins by knockout, right? Like, there's very few guys at heavyweight that do not have one-punch power. Now, there's differences in that. Kind of like a guy like Francis, every shot he has is one-punch power, whereas a guy like Cormier, he's got to put it on the button, but he can put you away. So there is differences in the kind of one-shot power, but all heavyweights have one-shot power, which is why it's so hard for those guys to put together consecutive wins. There was 5 guys before Stipe finally beat the record that had 2 consecutive title defenses. Cain Velasquez, Brock Lesnar, Andrei Arlovski, Tim Sylvia, and Randy Couture were all tied with 2. And, Randy having the most with 6 title wins, it took him 3 championships to do that. He had 1 defense, no defenses, and 2 defenses. It is a very tough division to not get knocked out in. So, but yeah, I think if Francis does the right things, he has the potential to be the GOAT. That being said, right now, I'd rate him as the best champion ever to not defend the belt. So I'd put him above Carwin. I'd put him above Big Nog. Put him above Rico Rodriguez. I'd put him above Barnett. I'd put him above Rutin. And I put him above Coleman. But all those guys that have defended the belt, they've accomplished more than him. That being said, if he's able to even get that one defense, then, I'd slide him right ahead of all those other guys, right? Like, it'll be hard. Yeah, I think for him to break into the top 5, he needs at least 2 defenses. He's got to tie that, no longer the record, but that old benchmark, I guess you could call it, right? That was for a long time the standard for being a great UFC heavyweight champion, was that 2 title defenses. So I think if he's able to get that 2 title defenses, that'll break him right into the top 5. I think 1 title defense will put him top 10 heavyweights all time. 2 title defense puts him top 5. And then as he starts ranking up 3, 4, 5, 6, if he's able to do that, then I think you're looking at like heavyweight GOAT status, right? It's just, yeah, it's a little early to say. Obviously, everyone gets excited when there's a new heavyweight champion. They're always ready to crown the new GOAT. First it was Cain Velasquez. Then, Junior Santos beat him. Then everyone thought Junior was going to be the guy. Then Cain came back and beat him twice. And then everyone's like, oh, no, it was Cain. That was just a fluke. And then Verdum beat him. And then everyone's like, oh, well, Verdum beat Fedor. Andy beat Cain. Maybe Verdum's going to be the GOAT. And then Stipe came in. And Stipe was actually finally the guy to at least tie Randy Couture's record. And, now there's another guy that you can have an argument for is like the heavyweight for GOAT for UFC and for MMA. But right now I think Ngannou's got probably the most potential of any heavyweight ever, including Brock Lesnar. I think when I think of Ngannou, I think if he does what everyone wanted Lesnar to do, and he actually trains properly. Lesnar was known for, again, I said this earlier, just training at his house, chilling with his friends, doing wrestling. Didn't really do much kickboxing. The kickboxing he was doing wasn't at a high level somewhat, but not at the highest level it could be. Everyone always wanted to see Brock go train at Golden Glory, which was the top gym at the time for kickboxing in the Netherlands. And I think if Francis does what Brock should have done, if Francis goes and trains at Golden Glory, goes and trains with Teddy Rene, goes and trains in Eastern Europe with those top wrestlers, and he can build that skill set and get those training partners, those big guys that are, able to show him stuff at his size, I think he has the potential to be the GOAT. So we'll see. Looks like his next title defense is going to be Derek Lewis. I think they officially announced that. So that'll be very interesting. I don't think they've announced a date for it yet. I'm actually going to check that out. Because I think the June 12th date was a no-go for the champion. Okay, so Ngannou's messing around in Africa, which we were saying earlier. That could be what ends up screwing him, right? Because if you've got Francis Ngannou, messing around in Africa, and then the guy he just lost to not that long ago, Derek Lewis, training his ass off, that could be a problem. Now, obviously, the big difference in this fight is that Ngannou no longer has those mental blocks, and Derek no longer has the back issues, but yeah, that'll be interesting. I expect that to be a fireworks fight, and that'll be, in many ways, probably the fight that defines, not defines his legacy, but it'll give us a good indication of where his legacy is going to go. Is he just going to be a one-and-done champion where in 10 years we're talking about how he could have been the greatest ever? Is he going to be a couple defense champion where we're talking about him as, a top 5 guy all time? Or is he going to, just start smashing dudes left, right, and center, or continue smashing dudes left, right, and center, go on that absolute tear, and just destroy the record that Stipe and Couture have built for themselves. So I guess we'll see. Like, comment, subscribe, and see you next video.